So, welcome back to Learning in an Instant with her and me, Cripps and Clark. We've already talked about the open, the closed and the probing questions, but sometimes we don't get the answers we expected. Sometimes people are still withholding that information.
Yeah, understandably so. If it's the first time you've spoken to someone, then they're not going to trust you. They're going to be thinking, who are you? Why are you asking me these questions?
Yeah.
Even if you've got a bit of a relationship with them, to dive in and ask a really strong probing question, it sort of puts people on the back foot a little bit.
So sometimes in order to combat that, we need to explain the question, introduce the question, or explain to them the benefit of us actually having that information.
Yeah, really key.
Well, actually, not us having the benefit, but the benefit to them of us having that information.
Even more important, whenever you're asking for something, you've got to explain it and as to the reason why. So if you were going to be taking a job spec from a client,
Yep.
How would you introduce that?
Okay, so in order for me, Angela, to represent your company well, professionally in the marketplace, and also in order to be able to identify the right talent within the agreed time frame, it's important that I fully understand the role that you're recruiting for.
Perfect.
And then I can go in and start asking the specifics, which you'll have either on your job template or the questions that you have in your head.
Great. So for me with a candidate,
Yep.
again, before you interview them, before you sit down with them, explain that the interview process is all about you gaining as much information from that candidate as possible, for them to be as open and honest as they can be
Yep.
about their working life. But the key is so that I can then represent them well and
Yep.
I can find them the ideal job.
Right.
What is it that you really need? And I'm only going to get that if I get lots of answers from you.
So if you're my candidate, I say, Angela, in order for me to be able to represent you well to my clients, it's important that you're open and honest with me, you answer my questions in detail, because the client is going to need that information in order to make a decision on whether or not they actually want to interview you and potentially hire you.
Perfect.
The better I know you, the better I can represent you. Does that sound fair? So I've introduced it, put a closed question on the end just to clarify that the candidate is with me, they understand, and hopefully now they'll spill the beans on their background and experience and their achievements.
So while you're working on your questioning technique, think about your introduction as well. How are you going to introduce those questions to make sure that the person feels comfortable to actually answer them?
Yeah. And don't ever be afraid to say to somebody that if they're not giving you the level of detail that you want, or if they're veering off topic, you can actually stop them, not necessarily interrupt and say, well, that's really interesting information, but my client is more interested in your experience in this particular area, your exposure to the sort of the Asia Pac region. So tell me more about your experience there. So we can still get them back on track, ask them a good open question, but explain to them the benefit as to why they should be answering in detail.
Yeah. So there's your introduction to questions on our Learning in an Instant.
See you on the next one.